9 years after its initial reveal in 2016, Lost Soul Aside releases in 2025. Going back to that original trailer is really interesting now that we have the final version. There are a ton of key differences, and clearly a lot of changes were made to the game. Much like Final Fantasy Versus 13, the original vision for what Lost Soul Aside was supposed to be was never actually realized. Unfortunately, this is the result of a project restart back in 2020, along with lack of experience and over-aiming with ambitious goals for the budget that was allocated for the game. And although director Yang Bing did join forces with Sony back in 2017 to form Ulti-Zero Games, a proper studio that would help develop Lost Soul Aside, by 2019, the team size was only around about 20 people, relatively quite small. The 2016 iteration of the game though is really interesting because basically all of the contents are no longer present within this final version. Keeping in mind though that at this stage the game had only been in development for 2 years and was being developed only by Yang Bing, one person. Personally though, I think that's what made Lost Soul Aside so damn impressive when it first hit the internet, and also why this project went so viral, eventually leading to Sony taking notice. For 2 years of work though, it looked like Yang Bing had made some great progress with this game, although the trailer does feature a lot of locations that are honestly quite empty and barren. It was clear that the game was still very much in the early stages of development. The sheer amount of locations, environments, and set pieces that appear throughout the 5-minute runtime of this trailer is a really impressive feat, but furthermore to know that all of these environments were scrapped for the game that we have today. None of these environments appear within the final build. Wide open grassy plains, mountainous locations with floating islands off in the distance, castle-like ruins, cavernous waterways, foggy forests, a desert region, a jungle rainforest, modern city streets, and even an earthreal looking forest with a moonlit cathedral off in the background. While some of the locations in the final build are clear evolutions of what's seen here in this trailer, basically all of them were scrapped in 2020. There's also a few points throughout this trailer that clearly show that Lost Soul Aside at points was going for an open world setup. As we know, the level design of the final game is very much linear, and personally so I think it should be if it is trying to be more of an action-orientated hack-and-slash title. But here we can clearly see KZ using a scan mechanic to scan the environment to uncover points of interest. Arena's wing transformation was also going to be a proper controllable flight mechanic as well. In the final game, these are only ever used in cutscenes, but here in this build, you can actually use them to traverse the environment, to even fly up onto the floating islands. In this screenshot, you can even see a point of interest located off in the distance. While the core gameplay of Lost Soul Aside has always remained to be the same, being a hack-and-slash action RPG, KZ's moveset and combos here in this version are quite a bit different compared to the final build. In this footage, KZ is only using the sword, as I'm assuming Yang Bing at this stage in development hadn't created weapon switching or multiple other weapons. I also want to say that it almost comes across as the gameplay that is on offer here within this very early build of Lost Soul Aside seems like it is a lot more punchy and provides a bit more impact to the feedback of actually attacking things compared to what we have right now with the final version. This is something that the Lost Soul Aside devs are currently working on to improve. They've already applied a patch that actually helps make the combat system feel a little bit better. One thing though that is very apparent is the attack VFX are insanely over the top. They are everywhere and they are super distracting. This is something that they really toned back on. You'll notice on the left of the screen there is a combo counter, which can commonly be found in character action hack and slash games. The last time this was was seen was in the 2017 build of the game. However, there was going to be a Devil May Cry style meter system that can be seen within the 2023 China Joy demo. The better you perform in combat without taking a hit, the higher your style meter increases. And this system was actually attached to the Burst Pursuit ability. So I'm assuming that the higher your style meter was, the stronger Burst Pursuit would be by pressing R2. It's really strange that they decided to remove this, considering that the 2023 build is actually quite recent, and it looks like this is going to be a core part of the combat system. We can also see a very different looking heads-up display. We've got 3 gauges here, with the bottom one being Kaiser's HP bar. I'm not too sure what this middle gauge is, but the top one here can be seen depleting when Kaiser is using the wings. There's this diamond and triangle icon with EX written over the top, which may have been used to activate a sort of burst or special mode ability. And we can see that level 1 is written to the left, maybe insinuating that there would have been a proper leveling system for this iteration of the game, rather than the skill point system we have now. Looking at how the minimap has north and south written on it probably goes back to the fact that this game was originally going to be an open world title. Quite often throughout this footage, the minimap does show very large, wide open spaces of playable area. A slightly improved version of the same HUD can then be seen again in the following year in 2017 within the PlayStation Experience footage. Something that's very apparent within the 2016 and 2017 build is violence and gore. The Voidrax here would actually bleed, and there were some attacks that you could pull off that would both dismember and decapitate. If you were to take damage, there'd also be this blood splat effect that would splat onto the screen. Also, the Voidrax that we're seeing here do look a little bit different compared to the ones we've got in the final version. Something that has remained though since the very beginning is the Victor fight and just the character of Victor, although the fight itself is happening in a totally different location here, in that the actual mechanics and moveset of the fight itself is also quite a bit different too. It seems that Yang Bing has always had this character in mind as a sort of semi-what antagonist role temporarily since Lost Solicide's inception. It also looks like Yang Bing was planning on incorporating the in-gameplay boss fight cinematics, much like what we see in Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. I also noticed within this gameplay too that there is a regular looking block. None of that really bizarre block system that we have in the final game with the arena ring that goes around Kaiser. Kaiser just simply raises his sword up to block, which I would have much preferred. It does look a little bit rough here, as does a lot of the gameplay, as it's so early on. This is very much a prototype of the game, but still, what I would do to just have a regular block. This character right here could very well be the very first early version of Aramon. Of course, he received a complete redesign. There is not one character in the game that even resembles this dude right here. Arena's English voice actor, and potentially even his entire vibe, totally changed in the final build compared to what we see here within the 2016 version.
Now that Aramon and his Voidrax forces are gone, there's no reason for me to stay.
The dream again. Well, it's time to resume our journey.
So those are the bulk of differences that were at least made public of the original vision of this game. As I mentioned, a great deal of this was scrapped in 2020 and the project was restarted, entirely taking out the open world aspect of this game. While it isn't explained within the Bilibili information that's been posted online covering Lost Solicide's development history, the reason why Yang Bing made this drastic decision was likely because of, one, inexperience for his team at the time, considering a lot of them were either mobile game developers or people who were taking on apprenticeships, meaning that they were learning how to develop whilst working on the game itself, but also Sony PlayStation's funding. The Bilibili information reports that the development budget of Lost Solicide was about 20% of Black Myth Wukong's budget and about half of Stellar Blade's. It's reported that Black Myth Wukong's budget was somewhere around 42 million US and Stellar Blade's was around about 30 million US. So from that, we can assume that Lost Solicide's likely came in around the 15 to 20 million mark. So there's a pretty good chance that in 2020, Yang Bing thought to himself, the scope that the team is trying to aim for in regards to that original vision and the fact that there is a clear lack of experience is just simply not going to be possible with the budget that's currently allocated. This is why Lost Solicide definitely comes across as a game that's not quite AAA, but also isn't AA. It is this really really weird mix in between. It's incredibly important to know though that Sony are the ones that set the price on this title, as they are the publishers. And the fact that this game did release in most regions around the world with a AAA price tag of $60 is likely because Sony want to be able to try and recoup a portion of the money that was lent to Yangbing and Ulti Games. However, it wasn't just a complete restart back in 2020, but Yangbing and Ulti faced quite a few road bumps from 2020 through until release now in 2025. This would include some big changes and revisions to Lost Soul Aside's story script in early 2024. This came at the request of Sony in order to keep fans engaged, as originally the game was going to have 10 story chapters, with the final version here now only having 5. Although from Sony's point of view, they thought that with this many chapters, there might be a loss of engagement and attention from the player. Honestly speaking, now knowing this could be one of the major reasons why I think that the story is one of the weakest aspects of this game. Because clearly Yangbing had a much bigger story to tell if it was going to span over 10 chapters. Who knows though, it may have been a situation where the story was dragging and it was better told within 5. Back in 2021 through until early 2023, most of China was still in lockdown. Because everyone was forced to work from home, this meant that overall progress on the game had slowed down significantly. Keeping in mind that around this point there were only 30 people working at Ulti Games. Unfortunately though, during this time, a lot of the team members ended up leaving Ulti to move on to bigger studios. There was even a situation that occurred last year where the studio's planner was leaking internal information about the project, along with giving false information, along with getting involved in online drama within Chinese forums. It's reported that Yangbing struggled to get this person fired, and it was only after the public had caught wind of this issue that Sony allowed him to actually make the call to remove her from the studio. Suffice to say, Yangbing has gone through some insane trials and tribulation to finally arrive here in 2025 with the completed product. Although it isn't the original vision that he had in mind back in 2014 when he first started working by himself on Lost Soul Aside, I think the game still ended up being quite a fun time. There are some very clear issues, as I explained within my review, but the game's only been out for just over a week at this stage, and this relatively small team has already pumped out a great optimization and enhancement patch, and they'll continue to do so. Even if this game didn't manage to quite hit the mark and meet the expectations that so many had for it, Yangbing's journey of getting to where he is now is one of pure inspiration. But at least from what we know, it absolutely did not come easy. To be really honest, when you look at the final product of Lost Soul Aside, knowing the size of this development team, then comparing it to a game like Devil May Cry 5 from Capcom that had 250 people working on that, or something like Final Fantasy 15 that at the time had 1,500 people working on that, it is actually really impressive to see what Ulti ended up coming out with, and also knowing the budget they had to work with. However guys, that is a look back on the original vision of Lost Soul Aside and a bit on its development history. Hopefully this has been able to provide a little bit more insight towards the journey that this game has gone through. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Be sure to slippity slap that like button and hit subscribe if you haven't already. A big shout out to my wonderful patrons and YouTube members. Thank you guys so much for the continued support. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and we'll chat again real soon.